The Speak Mandarin campaign sought to destroy Chinese Singaporeans' real mother tongues.
The Speak Mandarin campaign sought to destroy Chinese Singapore's real mother tongue.
First, by demeaning them as provincial dialects of Mandarinians' real mother tongues. First, by demeaning them as provincial dialects of.
First, by meaning them as provincial dialect
Mandarin, when they are
dialects of Mandarin.
In fact, mutually unintelligible languages, provincial dialects of Mandarin, when they are in fact mutually
when they are in fact intelligible
languages as different as English,
when they are in fact intelligible, different. They are intelligible languages as different.
German and Danish. Mutually unintelligible to them as provincial dialects of Mandarin, when they are in fact mutually unintelligible languages.
And they are in fact intelligible languages as different as English, German, and Danish.
As different as English, German, and Danish. Lee Kuan Yew, Singapore's founding father.
Lee Kuan Yew, the Singapore's founding father,
who started learning Chinese in his 30s,
started learning Chinese in his 30s.
Promoted the now discredited notion.
Promoted the now disparaged.
That humans started learning Chinese in his 30s. Promoted the now discredited notion.
Promoted now the discredited notion
that humans have a tightly limited capacity for language.
The human tightly competitive
language. Now discredited notion that humans have a tightly limited capacity for language.
The human has competitive for language.
Hokkien and all that humans have a tightly limited capacity for language.
Human has tightly competitive capacity for language.
Hokkien notion that humans have a tightly limited capacity for language.
The human has tightly competitive for language.
Hokkien and all the rest mind the official bilingualism by Hokkien and all the rest undermine the official bilingualism by
Hokkien and all the rest undermining the official lingualism
by hogging chunks of children's memories.
By hogging chunks of lingualism.
Undermine the official bilingualism by hogging chunks of children's memories.
By hogging chunks of children's memories.
Further, the great tidier disliked the diversity embodied in these languages.
Further,
the great tidier disliked the diversity embodied in.
Further, the great tidier disliked the diversity.
These languages. Further, the great tidier disliked the diversity and.
The great tidier
embodied in memories. Further, the great tidier disliked the diversity and.
Further, the great tidier has diversity. Further, the great tidier disliked the diversity
embodied in these languages. Further, the great tidier disliked the diversity embodied in these languages.
Further, the great tidier disliked.
Further, the great tidier disliked the diversity and.
Further, the great tidier disliked diversity
embodied in these languages.
Embodied in these languages.
and wanted to forge a single Chinese identity.
and wanted
Embodied in these languages and wanted to forge a single Chinese identity.
to forge a single identity.
Embodied in these languages and wanted to forge a single Chinese identity.
Wanted to forge a single Chinese identity.
Reason enough to foist on Chinese Singaporeans.
Reason enough to
An single Chinese identity. Reason enough to foist on Chinese Singaporeans.
reason enough to foist on Chinese Singaporean.
A Chinese identity. Reason enough to foist on Chinese Singaporeans.
Reason enough to foist on Chinese Singaporean.
An alien language.
An alien language.
Lee also thought that
Lee also thought
China's opening promised an alien language. Lee also thought that China's opening
Lee also thought that Chinese opening
promised riches to those who
promised riches.
could. Lee also thought that China's opening promised riches to those who could speak its official language.
Lee also thought Chinese opening promised the riches to those.
China's opening promised riches to those who could speak its official language.
Riches to those who could speak its official language.
China's opening promised riches to those who could speak its official language.
Who could speak its official language.
So dialects were disparaged.
So dialects were disparaged.
Speak its official language. So dialects were disparaged.
So dialects were disparaged.
In the early 1980s,
In the early 1980s,
television and radio programming in these
television and radio programming
languages all but disappeared. The early 1980s, television and radio programming in these languages
in these languages
all but disappeared.
all but disappeared. Television and radio programmings, all that in this language, all but disappeared.
But in the 80s, television and radio programming in these languages all but disappeared.
Television and radio programming in these languages all but disappeared.
Putting many people adrift. Radio programming in these languages all but disappeared.
All but disappeared.
Putting many people adrift.
Cutting many people adrift.
To speak dialect with your child.
To speak dialect with a child.
Government putting many people adrift. To speak dialect with your child, the government warned.
To speak dialect with your child, the government warned,
To ruin his future.
is to ruin his future.
By the campaign's own yardsticks, the success is
By the campaign's own yardsticks.
striking. Ruin his future. By the campaign's own yardsticks, the
By the campaign's own yardsticks.
success is striking.
The success is striking.
The use of Chinese vernaculars at home has
The use of vernaculars at home.
collapsed. The success is striking. The use of Chinese vernaculars at home has collapsed from
The use of Chinese vernaculars at home.
76 striking. The use of Chinese vernaculars at home has collapsed.
The use of Chinese vernaculars at home has collapsed
From 76% of
from 76%
Chinese households in 1980
from Chinese in 1970
to 16% in 2015.
to 16% in 1950
Over Chinese households in 1980 to 16% in 2015.
to 6
Over Chinese households in 1980 to 16% in 2015.
to 16% in 2015.
Over the same period,
Over the same period,
the use of Mandarin rose from 16% in 2015. Over the same period, the use of Mandarin rose
the use of Mandarin rose
from 16% in 2015. Over the same period, the use of Mandarin rose
the use of Mandarin rose
from 13% of Chinese households to
from 13% Chinese household
46%.
46%.
Mandarin rose from 13% of Chinese households to 46%.
From 30% in Chinese household to 46%.
But the linguistic engineering has had an unintended consequence.
But the linguistic engineering has had unintended consequence.
But the linguistic engineering has had an unintended consequence.
But the linguistic engineering has had an intended consequence.
The use of English is now increasing faster.
The use of English now increasing faster,
especially among younger families.
Especially among younger families.
Over 70% of households with children at primary school
use
it as their main language.
Use it as their main languages.
Under 1% of households with children at primary school use it as their main language.
Use it as their main languages.
Undermining Mandarin and vernaculars.
Undermining Mandarin and vernaculars.